I think, first of all, we need to try and stop the blame game, because this isn't just one group. It's not government or industry who is to blame. I'd like to bang a few heads together, I think. Having spent, years of my life in the airline industry and then obviously years in the European Parliament dealing with the legislation, including things like passenger rights, which are very important. But if I may just come in on a general point, how you're actually going to get an aircraft off the ground, which I think may be useful. You're looking at an industry which is safety and security critical. They cannot move from A to B unless the pilots are licensed, the crew are licensed, engineers are licensed, people who are working airside from a security point of view, all of their licences are up to date, even those that are working in a duty-free shop. So all of those things, in many cases, had to be
licensed to work in a duty-free shop in an airport?
It would be licensed in the sense of a security check. Right. They have to be security checked. So the difficulty with the lockdowns, to be fair, was a lot of people left, people went on furlough, licences ran out. And all of that had to replace. And that was clearly a job then for the Home Office or the Civil Aviation Authority. And perhaps they should have been speedier off the mark once we were looking at lifting restrictions, which is something that I was trying to push for. Getting the aircraft off the ground once it's been mothballed, you cannot pick an aircraft out of a hangar and then just pop it on the runway. Again, it's got to be brought up to speed to make sure the certification and everything is working. So, sorry, it's a bit sort of technical. No, but that's the reality, because your safety and security is paramount just to get started. Now,
look at the safety and security of these people on the screen, by the way. If you're listening, I apologise as opposed to watching, because whilst Jacqueline's talking, I'm just showing you some footage of what's been occurring at some of the airports, by the way. You've got armed police wandering around baggage carousels, where some of the passengers took it upon themselves to go behind the conveyor belt. I'm sure there's a technical term for where they went, but they went through the conveyor belt try and find their own luggage.
So if I just may conclude by saying, so the fault in my view lies with government, because they were far too slow. The lockdowns were horrendous, and the restrictions, people didn't know whether it was a red, white or, green route that was opening or closing. So there was all of that. So the industry was badly affected. But I also put a lot of responsibility on the industry itself. As I said, there were many of us in Parliament and we were pushing to lift the restrictions. We knew that the aviation, hospitality, aerospace sectors, which underpin 4 million jobs in this country, were taking an absolute hammering, and we needed to get this off the ground. OK, they didn't have tons of notice, but I'm equally not at all happy with the way the airports have been dealing with this either. There is no excuse, frankly, for people to be queuing for 3 hours going through security. Not now, maybe initially, but certainly not now. Clearly there are peaks and troughs when you go to the airport and then when the flights are taking place. But that then comes also back on the airlines, which you've quite rightly mentioned. Of course, there were millions of holidays that were cancelled, and of course the airlines themselves need to make sure that people are now able to go on those holidays, but they're equally at the same time selling tickets.
They are,
indeed. So you've then got this massive overload of people who are trying to get away, and they're business people too, and there's freight and there's all sorts of things like that, and it's ended up as a complete shambles.
Can I ask